Today we are talking about project risk management. This is the second last chapter from our point of view because we have already covered stakeholders. So we have risk and then we'll be taking on that procurement chapter. Risk management, again, like many other chapters, like scope, time, cost, and quality, this is also having its own importance. Just like quality, this is a complete discipline by itself. So it is not only for projects that we do the risk management. Normally we do risk management otherwise also from the financial perspective, from the operational perspective. But here we are going to be talking about the project risk management. So project risk management includes the process concerned with conducting the risk management planning, identification of various risks, then the qualitative and quantitative analysis, creating the risk responses, and ultimately monitoring and controlling the project throughout the life cycle of the project. And these processes are going to be repeated time and again because we are dealing with uncertainty. We cannot be sure that we have identified all the risks. So as we move on, we progressively elaborate and we find even more risks as we move ahead. So this is a continuous process. We will keep identifying, analyzing, and responding to the risks and ultimately monitoring and controlling them in the way. The objective of this is to increase the probability and impact of positive events and decrease the probability and impact of events adverse to the project. Now, what does that mean? That clearly shows that risks are not always negative. Risks could be positive, risks could be negative. The positive risks are called opportunities and negative risks are called threats. So if there is an opportunity, definitely we must make use of it. We must exploit that opportunity. We must try to increase the probability, the chances of that opportunity coming to us and the impact it can create. We want it to be enhanced. On the other hand, for the negative risk, we want to decrease their probability and impact because they are not going to be good for the project. We'll talk more about the positive and the negative risks. These are the 6 processes we have. As you have already heard from me, project risk management, meaning that first of all we need to create a risk management plan in the process plan risk management. The next process is identify risk, in which we identify all the possible risks we can identify at any one point in time, and then we do two kinds of analysis on that risk analysis, identified risks. That is, first of all we qualitatively analyze the risks and then we quantitatively analyze the risks. I'll explain how to do the qualitative and quantitative analysis. Then once we have thoroughly analyzed these risks, we create the risk responses. This much is done in project planning process group. The first 5 processes are in the planning, and the 6th process and the last process is in control. Monitoring and control. All the risks will be monitored and controlled. Before we can proceed ahead, let us discuss 2-3 terms about risk. Let us see what is a risk appetite. Any ideas? What do you think a risk appetite is?
The level of risk that a company is willing to take.
Willing to take, right? Willing to take, then what is risk tolerance?
रिस्क टॉलरेंस तो जरा क्वांटिफाई कर देंगे ना आप उसे. रिस्क एपेटाइट का इनिशियली ये है कि मतलब एक कई कंपनीज होती हैं रिस्क अवर्ट होती हैं.
राइट.
कहती हैं कि भाई यार कोई रिस्क ना लेकिन आप whatever the ventures come into you, you
Okay.
always have to take a risk and the reward is likely going up.
Okay.
So risk tolerance will have slightly ahead of that. Once you
Mhm.
have taken a risk, you identify certain project, you know that there is a risk in it, and
Right.
if your risk tolerance limits allow you to go into for that particular project, you would.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you might not.
So if I say the risk appetite is the quantity of risk you are comfortable with, you are happily, willing to take that kind of risk. That does not really matter for you. From your perspective, in whatever environment you are, that much risk is just, normal for you. That is not something which hurts you. So that is your normal risk appetite. You see, a mosquito bites you and you will just rub it off and you will not mind it. So there is a risk that a mosquito can bite you, but this is within your appetite. This is in your daily routine. You do not really much care about it. I mean, you don't take specific measures to counter it, or this is just within your acceptance criteria. So this is
सर
your
एक थोड़ी सी
appetite.
एग्जांपल,
जी?
अगर थोड़ी सी एग्जांपल देखते हैं तो सर देर आर इन इन्वेस्टमेंट्स जो आपकी ट्रेडिंग की इन्वेस्टमेंट्स होती हैं.
Right?
There's certain companies they don't want to go into trading investments. They just want to go for mutual funds or something like this.
Okay.
लेकिन जो रिस्क प्रोन कंपनीज होती हैं वो कहती हैं कि ठीक है यार, वी वांट टू इन्वेस्ट इन एग्रेसिव काइंड ऑफ स्टॉक्स जिसमें इन्वेस्टमेंट हो सकती है. लेकिन वो अगर नेक्स्ट लेवल इसके, अगर द कंपनी गोज इनटू दैट काइंड ऑफ इन्वेस्टमेंट, वो क्या इसको बर्दाश्त भी कर सकती है? वो डाई, वो मरी तो नहीं जाएगी? मतलब इतना वो एडवांस में चले जाएं कि वो फारिग ही हो जाए,
Yeah,
सुसाइड
yeah.
हो जाए.
Actually, I would say that the amount of risk they are ready to take, they are confident that they can take on, and that will not bother you. You have done all your work and you think that this quantity of risk is just normal for us. This is not much for us. So, you have to increase your appetite for risk if you really want to be a good risk taker. But I would not prefer to be a good risk taker until and unless I have I am ready to take calculated risks. If I have done some calculations and I am sure that this much risk is okay with me, this is within my budget and this is affordable for me, that is within my appetite. I can increase my appetite. I can, gradually keep increasing my limit of appetite, and naturally the person who is taking more risk has more opportunities coming his way, because he would probably be exploring those areas which others are not. So we have to increase our appetite for the risk, and only then we can counter these kinds of risks. But anyways, what I really mean to say is, if something is in your appetite, that is not a risk, because you have already accepted that this much risk is not a problem for me. So you will not be identifying risks of that level and of that volume. Those risks are within your appetite and you are ready to accept them anyways. Then tolerance, as you said, tolerance is a level beyond appetite. Appetite was what risk you can take happily, without any trouble, without making any faces. Tolerance is it is testing your limits. This is the maximum limit you can bear, beyond which you will crash. So this is the limit you can reach. So this is not with with a happy face that you can take this much of risk. You will be in a lot of pain, but still it is within your tolerance, right? You may not have willingness for this, but this is your tolerance level. You can take up to this much pain. So this is something beyond the risk appetite. Risk tolerance would anything beyond your risk tolerance would be treated as a risk. Anything within your risk tolerance, you have already decided to accept it. Risk appetite, that is with comfort, you have no problems with that. Risk tolerance with pain, but still you have already decided to accept all those risks of that size and nature. And risk threshold is the definition of that limit, of your risk threshold limit. What is the minimum and maximum limit within which you can tolerate the risk? This is your risk threshold. Are you okay with these definitions?
But
Yes, sir.
the second one
Did it?
you said that within the level of risk tolerance, it will not be considered as a risk.
No, no, it's not, because it's tolerable. A tolerable risk is not a risk. It means that you have already decided that if there is a loss due to this specific aspect, I am ready to pay for it. Although this might be painful for me, but still I am ready to pay for it. I am not going to take any further steps to minimize that risk. That is within my tolerance. Anything which is outside of your tolerance, that is what is to be treated.
यानी कि सर risk mitigation measures जो हैं वो they will be only taken for those risks that are expected out of the tolerance limits. Within the risk tolerance limits, there
Exactly,
will be no
exactly,
measure.
exactly. That is the point.
ठीक.
The risk tolerance is what I can bear. So if I can bear it, no matter with pain or what, but if I can bear it, I will accept it. Anything beyond that is outside of my risk threshold, and I have to take certain measures for that, mitigation or whatever. Okay, so first step is plan risk management, and this is where we sit down and plan the whole process of risk. We outline the complete procedure, the guidelines for how will we identify the risks, what tools we'll be using, what principles we'll be using, what would be the method of identifying the risks, how the risks will be categorized, and so on and so forth. Then we also uh, formulate how the qualitative and quantitative risk analysis will be done. Again, what tools are to be used for that, what mechanism and methods are to be used for that, and ultimately, what are the various risk response strategies for positive risks as well as negative risks. So, what all are the rules, thumb rules, and principles for establishing the strategies. So, I will develop the risk response plan according to these guidelines, and later how these risks are to be monitored and controlled. And especially, I will also describe how often the revision of risk identification, risk management will occur throughout the life of the project, and when should it occur. So this is all going to be part of the risk management plan. So to do that, we need to have the project management plan and the charter, and naturally the stakeholder registers, because we do have to communicate with the stakeholders for identification of various risks and for developing a strategy or method for doing risk management. Enterprise environmental factors and process assets will be needed, and because we are establishing these rules and principles, so I should have complete knowledge of all the tools and techniques to be used during the identification, analytical, qualitative and quantitative analysis. So analytical techniques will be required here. I'll use expert judgments and meetings, and ultimately I'll come up with a risk management plan. This risk management plan is going to be useful in doing all the four processes of risk in planning. identify risk, qualitative analysis, quantitative analysis, and risk response. So these are the guidelines which I'll be following in these four processes. Moreover, risk management plan will also form part of the project management plan ultimately. Uh, what should be included in a risk management plan? Naturally, you will have to define your approach, tools, data sources that might be used to perform risk management on the project. So your whole methodology for the risk is described in risk management plan. Then you describe the various roles and responsibilities concerning risks. Who is leading the effort? Who is supporting it? Who are the members of the risk management team, and what actions they have to take? What are the various roles they have to take on? Like there are roles like risk owner, risk action taker. So what are the roles of various people as far as the risks are concerned? What is the budget available to us for handling the risk? It also depends upon what kind of funding is available, because if we do not have contingency, we do not have reserves, probably we will not be in a position to handle the risks. Timing when the risk management process will be revised in during the project life cycle. So that is a long discussion. What are the situations when we have to re-identify the new risks? There are so many other uh, situations in which we will have to revise this process. We will have to identify new risks at that point. That could be done periodically. That could be dependent on certain activities. Scoring and interpretation. What would be the method used for performing the qualitative and quantitative risk analysis, and how would you score, rank, and grade various risks in comparison with each other? You have to define the threshold. We have just talked about the risk threshold, the target against which the project team measures the effectiveness of the risk response plan execution. So, is it within the threshold or outside of the threshold? Reporting formats, how the risks are to be reported, the results of risk management process will be documented, analyzed, and communicated to the project team and the project stakeholders. Then documents all facets of risk activities and how the risk process will be audited. Okay, just have a look at this table 11.1. This is going to be instrumental in understanding and establishing what are the various parameters on which you can develop an impact scale. How much the risk is creating an impact on your project objectives. So to understand that, let us uh, take a scale of 1 to 5. 1 being very low, 2 being low, 3 being moderate, 4 being high, and 5 being very high. And let us see how much impact on the project objectives that could be having. And this table is not something which has been prepared already. This is, you will do it yourself for your project. Do not take this as some standard. This is not a standard table. This is just an example for you. You understand that risk is only when it is causing some impact on the project objectives. So let us decide on a scale of 1 to 5 how much impact it is causing on various project objectives. Let's say on cost, we will consider the impact on cost to be very low if it is insignificant. If it is less than say 10%, we would say it low. 10 to 20 moderate, high 20 to 40, very high more than 40. Now these figures are not static, they are not permanent. This you have to decide based on the sensitivity and complexity of your project what figures you want to take as far as the cost is concerned. Similarly, for time, if there is insignificant time increase, that will be very low. Here If time is more important for you, so you see the limits here are different. 5% increase, more, less than 5% increase is considered low. 5 to 10% moderate, 10 to 20% high, and greater than 20% is very high. Now these figures can change according to your requirements. If you feel that the cost is of more importance and cost should not slip, then you can reduce the percentages to maybe 10%, up to 10% or 20%. Similarly, if time is not that important, you may increase the percentages. Scope, if there is the scope decrease barely is noticeable, then it is very low. Minor areas of scope are affected. Major areas of scope are affected. Scope reduction unacceptable to the sponsor, and project and item is effectively useless. So probably the high and very high, as far as scope are concerned, are not really acceptable to us. In some cases, moderate is also not acceptable, but mostly high and very high are absolutely not acceptable. As far as quality is concerned, quality degradation is barely noticeable. It is very low. Only very demanding applications are affected. That is low. Quality reduction requires sponsor approval. That is moderate. Quality reduction unacceptable to sponsor. That is high. And project and item is effectively useless. That is very high. So you can very easily understand that these scales could be very useful in determining how much risky a project is. And not only that, we can somehow create a relationship amongst these, four project objectives and come up with scales. And maybe, I for a risk, I estimate that it has a high impact on cost, low impact on time, moderate impact on scope, and very low impact on quality. So these figures will be interpolated into one summary of these figures that could be a weighted average or a simple average, and ultimately I will get an impact on one scale. It would be maybe between moderate and high, or any one of the figures would be the overall score for that. But this table could be very useful in establishing your mind. You should not be, guessing it. You should not be just, making a guesstimate on how much impact that would cause. And this is going to be used for qualitative analysis. We are so far not talking about the quantitative analysis, in which we go for details of the calculation, exactly how much loss will it incur. I'm not talking about that. I am talking about on a very generalized scale of 1 to 5, very low to very high. So to establish even that generalized scale, I have to have the impact scales of a risk on major project objectives, and which are scope, time, cost, and quality. We will learn later that based on the probability and impact, we will create a matrix, and that matrix, it will be very helpful for us to develop a qualitative risk analysis. Then we have to be on a watch out for observing the stakeholder tolerances, because stakeholders may look tolerable in the beginning, but later on their tolerances may fluctuate, they may change. So I have to go along with them, and I cannot have a fixed tolerance level established. Naturally, I am going to be identifying more risks in the future, and naturally, if the tolerances have changed, I will have to reevaluate all the risks I have already identified and analyzed before. So that exercise will be repeated after every periodic cycle. What reporting format that has to be defined, how the outcomes of the risk management process will be documented, analyzed, and communicated. It describes the content and format of the risk register, what should all be included in the risk register, as well as any other risk reports required. tracking documents, how risk activities will be recorded for the benefit of the current project, and how risk management process will be audited. So these are the various things which must be included in the risk management plan. For the purposes of identification of the risk, we must create a risk breakdown structure. This could be developed at organizational level or it could be developed at project level. At organizational level, it will be more generalized, but at project level, it will be more specific to this project. A risk breakdown structure is just like a work breakdown structure or a organization breakdown structure. In this structure, we are identifying the various categories of risks under which the risks can fall, and then maybe some subcategories are also identified. And when I start off identifying the risks, I keep this table in front of me and I start from one end and keep identifying risks from each one of these categories. That way, there are less chances of ignoring or missing out on some of the risks in the identification process. So this is a very good thing. As you can see, if I can somehow divide my project into the project risks into technical risks, external risks, organizational risks, project management risks, or whatever other kind you want to category you want to add into it. And if you can break down the technical, you may have subcategories like the risks related to requirements, the risks related to technology, complexity and interfaces risks, performance and reliability risks, and quality risks. And then you can further get into each one of these branches and start identify those specific risks. So risk breakdown structure is a very important and very useful tool for the purposes of identification of risks. So once we are identifying the risks, we have the risk management plan, cost management plan and schedule management plan, quality management plan and HR management plan. You see, so many management plans are required here. Why? Why? Why do we require the risk management plan? Risk management plan is definitely required because we are studying the risk management knowledge area, and whatever the guidelines and principles we have suggested in the risk management plan are now to be used during the process of identification of risk. Therefore, risk management plan would be required and referred. Why cost management plan and schedule management plan? You see, scope, time, cost, and quality. These are the four project objectives. Scope management plan is not required, but if you look down at point 6, scope baseline is required. Scope baseline gives us the work breakdown structure and work packages. I can start from there. I can start my identification of risk from there. I do not need to, look at the scope statement or the scope management plan because that has yielded the WBS. And WBS can be a very good starting point for identifying the risks. So as far as scope is concerned, we don't need scope management plan. Scope baseline is okay with us. But the time, cost, and quality, these three management plans are required. Why? Because risks are not only of a specific quality or order. Risks, if there is a risk in the time management, I will only be able to analyze that risk or understand that risk if I knew what were the guidelines provided in the schedule management plan and how was that duration selected for an activity. If I don't know that, probably I am unable to identify a risk out of it. Therefore, whatever the principles for developing a schedule management plan or a cost management plan, those are required here during risk management planning, risk identification, as if I should be better equipped to identify the various risks in the areas of time, cost, and quality. Then activity cost estimates and duration estimates, these are the actual data of estimates, and naturally we will keep reserves in the estimates, no matter these are the cost estimates, these are the duration estimates, these are the resource estimates, all of these estimates, I will need to have their estimates to identify the risks. Stakeholder register is very important because I have to get in touch with the stakeholders as if they can tell me what risks come to their mind. Project documentation, which is separately recorded, is also required here because in any one of those documents there could be some amendment. Procurement documents, the portion of work which we have decided not to do ourselves and has to be outsourced, that must also be in front of us while we are identifying the risk. Because when we identify risk, it does not matter whether we are going to do it ourselves or we are going to get it done by a subcontractor. So we have to look at all the procurement documents as if we can find any procurement risks as well. Enterprise environmental factors and process assets will be used, and the tools we require here are we will be doing the documentation review. But all documents we have, the procurement documents, the project documents, and all that, we will review those documents and learn a lot from them. Then we will go to the stakeholders from the stakeholder list, and we will gather information from them. Therefore, I must have information gathering techniques available to me. Checklist is a very good mechanism to see whether a specific risk applies to our project or not. And how do we create a checklist? I could have created this checklist from the previous record or previous history of the project we have done, various other projects, and that all the risks which were there in that earlier project could be an indicator of what kind of risks I could have. So in identification of the risks, this is a very important tool for identification of the risk. Then is the assumptions analysis. Assumptions analysis is that when because of uncertainty, inherent uncertainty in the project, there are many points where we do not know facts about something, and to move ahead, we have to take some assumption. Those assumptions are the basis of my estimate. I calculate everything according to keeping in view those assumptions as true, considering those assumptions as true, because their actual truth is not known right now. But I can't stop working, I have to keep working, and therefore I am making use of those assumptions. These assumptions may prove right or may prove wrong. Naturally, this will be revealed over a period of time. After some time, we would be able to say whether our assumption was correct or wrong. If it was wrong, and we now understand that that assumption which we had taken was wrong, then this becomes our responsibility to replace that assumption with the fact or the factual data now available. Therefore, assumptions are like most prospective clients for risks. Wherever there is assumption, there might be risk because that very assumption is likely to go wrong. So, to cater for that, this is why we require the uh, sorry assumptions analysis. Sorry, I was lost somewhere. So assumption analysis is required for that purpose. Assumptions are like red lights, like markers, which we have to keep a watch on because most of the risks will come out of them. Then we have got diagramming techniques. I'll show you some of the diagramming techniques in which we'll calculate how how the risks where the risk really exists. SWOT analysis is another wonderful tool for identifying the risks. I hope you understand SWOT is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. As far as the strengths and weaknesses are concerned, they are internal to the organization and they are in control of the organization. If they want to enhance their strengths or exploit their strengths and reduce their weaknesses, that is their business. That is not a risk. Strengths and weaknesses are not the risk. But threats and opportunities are not in the control of the organization, but identifying them is one part of the SWOT analysis. So we do identify the opportunities which are the positive risks and the threats which are the negative risks. So SWOT analysis is a very important tool which can help us identify various positive and negative risks. Then we do the expert judgment, and ultimately we will create a very long list of all the risks, which is called the risk register. Okay, something about the dynamics of the risk itself. What is a risk? Risk is an event. Risk is an event which has a likelihood of happening. You see, this is not other activities which we are doing, which we have identified various activities we have to do. We were certain that we have to do them. As far as the risks are concerned, these are probabilities. We are not certain if this will happen. But if this happens, then I have to take certain measures. So risk is an event or consequence that have the probability of occurring during a project and that are measured by their impacts on the project. So what are the various impacts? These are the four major impacts on the project objectives. What are the components of a risk? By itself, as I just said, risk is an event which has a probability of happening. So we are not sure that this will happen, but it can happen. The probability, how many chances are there that this risk will happen is the risk event probability. When this risk will happen, how much damage will it cause if it is a negative risk, or how much beneficial it would be if it is a positive risk. This is the risk outcome or the consequence of the risk. And the this is the amount at stake, and the risk event status would be determined by the multiplication of the probability and the amount at stake. Now this needs to be discussed. What do I mean by this? Why do we calculate the status of the risk or impact of the risk as the multiplication of probability and amount at stake? Anyone who can help me with that? I said the impact of the risk is probability multiplied by amount at stake.
So the event means that this would be the impact it will create. For instance, the amount at stake is $100,000. तो
Okay.
अगर उसकी probability सिर्फ 0.2 है,
हम्म
तो risk तो फिर 20% $20,000 रह जाएगा ना. और अगर उसकी probability जो है वो close to 1 है, तो that means कि वो तो आप बिल्कुल $100,000 सिंक करने लगे हैं. So that
Right.
is the event, actually the impact that it will create, the likelihood of impact.
बिल्कुल सही है. Anyone else?
We need to actually look into the status just to let us know to compare it with our appetite or the tolerance level and the threshold that we are going to accept. For this purpose, the event status is going to be calculated.
If something is identified as a risk, that means that is already that is outside of my threshold. That is neither in my tolerance nor in my appetite.
Exactly, but even then we have to calculate it just to get into knowledge that whether it is or not. But that is based on the stakeholder who will decide it.
A stakeholder is just telling us, indicating to us what the risk could be, right? And naturally, we are going to put him wise. Naturally, we are going to get data from him, and we are going to do all the maths, and we will convince the stakeholder about the risk. So this is, a two-way story. But the main thing what I wanted to ask was, if there is a risk of this room catching fire, and the loss would be 10 lakh rupees, but the probability is just 10%. According to Adil Saab, we will just take care of this problem by multiplying 10% with 10 lakh rupees. So what is 0.1 of 10 lakh rupees?
1 lakh rupees, and
1
that is
lakh.
the quantified. Yes, sir. अब ये
Okay.
quantify हो गया ना सर.
Quantify हो गया.
Now you compare it with the, for instance, आपने इंश्योरेंस भी करनी है तो आप 1 लाख की इंश्योरेंस करेंगे.
Right. 1 लाख की इंश्योरेंस करेंगे.
मेरा मतलब कहने का है सर ये कि मतलब you have to quantify the risk before you can take an action on that. वो जो लास्ट वाले थे ना,
जी वो तो ठीक हो गया.
के बाद पता नहीं क्या वर्ड था वो भूल गया.
Right. We know that the impact of this risk on the project is 100,000. But actually, if this risk occurs, the actual on-ground loss will be 10 lakh rupees. Right? So there might be a question, what if this risk really happens? How much will be the loss?
$10 lakhs होगा, जब होगा तो 10 lakhs होगा.
नुकसान तो 10 lakh का होगा. So, but we have only dedicated 1 lakh rupees for this risk. How are we going to handle it? From where the remaining 9 lakh rupees will come?
Insurance.
Insurance, that essentially means that you are already applying a risk response and you have transferred the risk to insurance company. But I am not really interested in the risk response right now. I am just asking, when your quantitative or qualitative analysis does not take care of the full amount, there must have been some justification why the calculation said 1 lakh rupees is enough. To understand this, you do not have to consider this scenario in isolation. Try to think out of the box. There is a risk of 10 lakh rupees with a probability of 10%. If it risk occurs, that will definitely damage 10 lakh. But the amount which we have dedicated for this specific risk is only 100,000. If I have only 100,000 rupees to cater for that risk, but if that risk occurs, from where the remaining 9 lakh rupees will come?
They're from the other areas which also have the probability of like 10%, 20%. और उनके लिए भी तो आपने रखे होंगे, सारी चीजें तो नहीं हो जाएंगी.
Yes, exactly. Do you understand everybody else? What does he mean by saying that?
Perhaps this is the concept of insurance again.
Yeah, exactly. This is exactly the concept.
The basic concept of insurance.
Because insurance is in the business of risk management.
Risk management, exactly.
They're basically the financial risk managers. But from exclusively from project risk management point of view, this is not the only risk we have in our project. There are so many other risks, and we have kept money for each one of those. So if any one of the risks really occurs, and it damages say 10 lakh rupees, then only 1 lakh rupees is available to be spent on it from the head of this risk only. Remaining all other risks have not happened or will not happen. So maybe we can take that 9 lakh rupees from their reserves and use them. Let's take another example. Let us say there are 10 risks in your project. Each risk is of 10 lakh rupees damage, and each risk is 10% probability. So for one risk, there will be 1 lakh rupee you will keep aside. For 10 risks, it would be how much?
Like 10 lakhs.
Exactly, 10 lakh rupees. So we have 10 lakh rupees for 10 risks. Okay, what is the probability of one risk happening? Any one risk happening?
1 by 10th.
1 by 10th. So it is 10%, right?
Exactly.
So for all practical purposes, which we understand, if one risk has occurred, remaining 9 are not likely to occur. So all the money we have kept from them will actually be used on the one risk which has actually happened. And this is not only the negative risks we are talking about, actually, there are opportunities also. So the opportunities will balance out the threats also. They will also cause some impact. But naturally, we understand and believe that there will be more risk and less opportunities in your project. Opportunities are scarce. So negative will always be more and positive will be less. But even if negative are more, negative will be compensating each other as well. So positive will also compensate each other, but negative will also compensate each other, just as the example I have just given you. So we do understand the concept of this formula, that is probability multiplied by amount at stake is the total impact of the project. So for risk identification, you must understand the various types and categories of risks. First of all, looking at the types, from business point of view, there are two risks. One is called business risk, which is profit or loss, and one is called insurable or pure risk. Pure risk are those areas which are definitely loss. There is no opportunity in them. So business risk could be positive or negative. That could result in a profit or a loss. But a pure risk, a pure risk or an insurable risk will always result in a loss. So here comes into play the insurance companies. Insurance companies target the pure risk, the risk of an accident happening, risk of you losing your life. So they invest in you. Rather, they ask you to invest in your risk. You give certain premium amount to the insurance company, and insurance company assures you that in case of an accident or anything untoward happening, they will fulfill your loss. Why are they doing it? They are exactly using the same formula we just talked about in 10 projects, 10 project risks. If a whole company, they are selling uh, health insurance to a company of 6,000 people, do you think all the 6,000 people will get sick? How many of those will ever get sick at any one point in time? Maybe 10%? Not more than that. Even 10% is a very huge figure. So even if 600 people out of 6,000 get sick, they will have certain treatment. Some will have only small little treatment. Some will have severe cases, serious cases. So the expenses the premium they are collecting from 6,000 people would actually not only cater for the insurance of those who have been, met an accident or damaged, but it will leave out a lot of money for the insurance company also. So insurance company capitalizes on this probability and therefore their business is run. Okay, now looking at it from the project perspective, there are three types of risks in project perspective. One are the known. These are the risks which you understand that they may happen because of your historical background. And you are a kind of sure about them that if they happen, they will cause this much loss. So if you can, guess the probability and the amount at stake of a risk, then it is a known. Known unknown is you partially have some certainty. You may know that this kind of risk may occur, but you don't know how much damage it will cause. So this is known. We can always refine the known and get it to the category of known. Known unknown may not be authentically treated, but a known can be treated well. Last but not the least is the unknown. That is a risk which I cannot conceive, and naturally I cannot guess how much damage it will cause. Such risks are unknown. Any risk which has yet not been identified is an unknown. As soon as a risk is identified, it does not remain unknown. It becomes a known. Then we have got categories for various risks. Risks could be external or internal to the organization. The external risks could be unpredictable or predictable. Unpredictable, like government issues a regulation that in Islamabad all construction must have earthquake proofing. So in that case, all the projects going to be done in Islamabad will have to abide by this. So this is an external unpredictable risk which now we have to cater in our project. Then there are external predictable. We have a trend. We understand what is likely to happen. Therefore, जी ना, अभी आ रही है आवाज? आप देखिए ना। अच्छा, I'll go back. I'll go back. Right. Okay. Right. Uh, Diagramming technique. Is it the slide?
सर और
डेल्फी
पीछे जाएं सर,
टेक्निक से सर।
डेल्फी टेक्निक से।
Okay, Delphi technique. I don't know what happened. Maybe. Right. So Delphi technique I was explaining. Delphi technique is a technique in which you keep the the originator of the idea as anonymous. You ask all the people to come up with their ideas, and their ideas are kept secret. I mean, their names are kept secret, but the ideas are circulated and debated within the team, and ultimately the best ideas are selected. This is to avoid the group think and avoid the influence of others on the originator of the idea. Then we go for interviewing. We interview the stakeholders, and that is the best way of getting the qualitative data from them. Root cause analysis is again a very interesting tool. It is, as you have already studied, Ishikawa. That is a root cause analysis that actually helps us build a better case for our risk. Risk is not just that there is a risk of a project getting delayed. This is not a risk at all. A risk must be defined in a proper format, and that is cause, risk, effect. And effect would clearly show the impact on the major project objectives: scope, time, cost, and quality. So, whatever the impact or effect you are showing, that must be due to a risk, and that risk must have a cause. Because if you want to operate on this risk, then you will have to eradicate the cause. So always identify the risk in a cause risk effect format. Do you understand me? Can you give me an example of cause risk effect?
नहीं है सर, समझ नहीं आया ये।
Okay. Root cause analysis is you must be able to dig down. Okay. Tell me, you are trying to. Yes.
लेकिन आप जो सर कह रहे हैं ना कि कॉज, रूट और इफेक्ट,
जी जी,
इसकी समझ आ रही है क्या? ये क्या चीज है?
cause root नहीं, cause risk and effect.
हाँ, यस, कॉज, रिस्क एंड इफेक्ट, ये क्या
Okay.
चीज, मतलब ये कौन?
Okay, tell me what could be a risk while you are going to your office.
ट्रैफिक फंस जाए, गाड़ी खराब हो जाए।
Okay. If you're okay, let's take your car gets out of order. What is the impact of that? What is the
getting late,
effect of that?
missing a meeting.
Missing a meeting. Okay. If this was a project, was missing the meeting affecting the project in any way?
Maybe not.
If not, then it is not a risk. That is my point.
अच्छा, cause, risk
Uh,
और impact.
cause risk effect. Right now I'm just talking about the effect.
ठीक है सर, ठीक है, got it.
Right? So the effect should be impacting any one of the project objectives. So normally when we try to identify the risk, we just say there is a resource risk. What do you mean by resource risk? Be very specific. What is exactly the risk and what is the effect of that risk? As if I can clearly see that they are impacting the major key project objectives. Because if it is not, then it is not a risk at all. That is one point. And second point is, you said the car will get out of order. Now then the car, okay, if you would have said that missing a meeting will impact my project. Yes, due to car getting out of order, I will miss the meeting, and that missing the meeting will, what impact will it cause on the project? Maybe the project timelines will be delayed. Maybe a specific item, the specific decisions will not be made. Okay, if those specific decisions could not be made, then how does the project get impacted? Right? If that decision is not made, project will be delayed. Now just listen very carefully. Now I understand the project will be delayed due to decision not being made in time. And why decision is not being made in time? Because we could not, I could not be there in the meeting. So what is the risk then?
Car getting out of order.
Yeah? Car getting out of order? Okay, that is not the risk at all. That is not the risk at all.
Missing the meeting.
Yes. Rather, I would say the impact is because of not being able to make the decision. And not being able to make the decision is due to not being available in the meeting. So there is a likelihood, there is a high likelihood that I will not be able to make to the meeting. There might be a further cause behind it, but I am ignoring that. Maybe you can write it here. I may not be able to make the meeting due to breakdown of my car. There is a high likelihood that certain decisions will be missed, which will cause delay in the project. What do you say?
Yes, sir.
So the effect is delay in the project. The risk is I won't be able to make certain decisions, and the cause is not being able to come to the meeting, and there could be a further cause behind it. That was because my car was broken down. Are you with me?
Yes, sir. एक सर एनालिसिस ये निकला आपकी बात से कि फॉर इंस्टेंस anything that does not impact the project objectives like time, cost, or quality, or
Yes.
scope,
Yes.
it should not be considered as a risk at all.
It should not be considered as a risk. It should not be. And there should be direct impact on the risk, on the project objectives. It should not be an indirect impact coming from a lot far away. I do agree that because your car has broken down, and that is exactly why all this has happened, but that is not the actual risk. Actual risk is not car breaking down. Actual risk is not being able to make the decision. Gee, any other risk you can come up with? Atif? जी आतिफ,
the important information that was supposed to be delivered during a meeting that could be missed. Meeting itself, you know.
make another risk, a completely different thing.
Okay, a scenario you mean?
Yeah, give me a new risk.
I mean, okay.
क्रेन ने लोड लिफ्ट करना है सर, वो नहीं आ रही।
Okay?
क्रेन ने लोड लिफ्ट करना था, उसका उसने ब्रेकडाउन हो सकता है, कुछ हो सकता है।
क्रेन ने लोड लिफ्ट कर, इट कुड नॉट लिफ्ट इट, या क्या हुआ?
क्रेन खराब हो गई या हाइड्रोलिक लीक कर गया उसका, या कोई
Okay, due to
टेक्निकल
the
ड्राइवर का
leak in the hydraulic leak in the crane will not be able to lift the required weight. और उससे क्या होगा? What is the impact?
उससे ये हो सकता है कि सर आपने, फॉर इंस्टेंस दैट वाज द डे यू हैड टू लिफ्ट समथिंग एंड पुट इट ऑन द रूफटॉप,
Okay,
द प्रोजेक्ट वाज गोइंग ऑन, और आपका सरिया ऊपर रखना था, और सरिया नहीं पहुंचेगा तो वो शटरिंग नहीं लगेगी,
okay,
सरिया
okay.
जाम नहीं बनेगा और लेंटर नहीं डलेगा।
So you can say activity XYZ will not be able to complete,
यस सर।
right? But what is the impact on scope, time and cost?
इट कुड बी कि वो द टाइम गेट्स डिलेड।
Okay, if time get delayed, then this is the risk, not the crane is the risk. The risk is कि वो छत पे पहुंचेगा नहीं सामान. The material would not be able to reach. जी,
ये सर, ये आप कैसे आइडेंटिफाई कर रहे हैं कि क्रेन का खराब होना रिस्क नहीं है, छत पे सामान पहुंचना रिस्क है?
आप कंसिडरेबल चीजों की तरफ जा रहे हैं ना. यू आर लुकिंग फॉर बिग थिंग्स. आई एम लुकिंग फॉर दोज थिंग्स विच आर इम्पैक्टिंग माई प्रोजेक्ट.
अच्छा, आप बिल्कुल जो डायरेक्टली जो चीज इम्पैक्ट कर रही है,
जी जी, आई हैव टू
उसको
क्योर
आप
इट
रिस्क,
देयर ना. आई हैव टू क्योर इट देयर, and naturally there is a chain behind it. I can correct the things there, but you see, I have to see where the impact is being created. You see, if it was crane, and the purpose was not fixing the crane. Purpose was getting the things on top of the building. If I can do it with some other means, my purpose solved. Why are we trying to fix the crane? Isn't there alternate strategy available to us? जी जनाब, शायद आपका क्या ख्याल है?
Human chain, they're passing it on one by one.
हाँ,
You can do it,
Sir,
but still the time will increase.
okay.
so there is possibility that someone has introduced some new requirements in the ongoing works that might delay the work, that might increase the cost, so it could affect on the objectives of the
That will affect the scope. That will
yes.
affect the scope, and that may also impact the cost and time and whatever. But basically,
Yes.
this is a scope change. So I just gave you this idea for the reason that you should be able to start thinking on these lines, that do not consider risk to be just a one word, a slang. Risk has to be very genuine. It has to have a cause. It has to have a risk, and it has to have an effect which could impact scope, time, cost, or quality. So it must be a deliberate statement. A deliberate statement. I would like to make 3 columns, for one for cause, one for risk, and one for effect, and yet another column which is showing which are the project objectives which are being impacted by its scope, or time, or cost, or quality. So that would be my complete statement of risk. Okay. If you are with me on that, then is a checklist analysis. I can create a list of a checklist from previous projects, that in my previous project of similar nature, I had these 200 risks. So I can keep that list in front of me and I can start checking it whether which is the risk which applies to me. Maybe not all, but some of the risks which have occurred in the previous project might be, applicable to my project. So this is an easy way of identifying the risks rather than doing the brainstorming and other things. This is easier because this is from the precedence from previous project. I am getting this example and I can create this checklist and I do the checklist analysis. I can do the assumptions analysis. But all are the assumptions I have taken for this specific project or activities, and all those assumptions are to be checked. Which assumption might go wrong? If it goes wrong, what will happen to the project? Whole estimates will be disturbed or whatever. So assumption analysis is also a good way of identifying the risks. In diagramming techniques, we just like I was talking about the cause effect diagram and cause risk effect format. Cause effect diagram, as you know already, can be shown as a fishbone. So in fishbone, you can track down what is the origin of specific risk. Then process charts, like we studied in quality, process flow charts, they can also help us relate from where this process has started, and again it will help us find the cause or source of the problem. And influence diagrams is something like this. Influence diagram is which of the factors are being influenced most. So these are 4 factors. Risk conditions are impacting the project estimate and the deliverable. Project estimate is impacting the activity and activity is impacting the deliverable. So which is being impacted most? Deliverable has 2 arrows getting into it. So the influence diagram will show, this is a very simple influence diagram. If it was a complicated influence diagram with tens and hundreds of activities, then I can simply count which is the factor which has got maximum number of impacts, maximum influences. So those maximum influences, I would know that I have to take special care of the deliverable. SWOT analysis. In SWOT analysis, as I have already discussed, we have the strengths and weaknesses which are internal to you, your organization, and you can always build on your strengths and eliminate or reduce your weaknesses. But opportunities and threats are risks. And this is a very good point, that while you are identifying these opportunities and threats, this is what you're identifying the risks. So you can exploit, you can mitigate, or whatever you want to do, you can do with them. Risk register should have a complete list of all the risks. Not only that, it is you can read it here. It has explicitly given you an example. Event may occur causing impact, or if cause exists, event may occur leading to effect. So there is a relationship of cause and effect for every risk. So it is better to write it in cause, risk, effect format. Moreover, it is good that you can, when you are collecting the risks, identifying the risks, if you can write the potential response, the initial response, whomsoever the stakeholder is who is telling you that this is the risk, ask him what can be done, and just jot it down in front of that risk in the risk register. Jot it down, the proposed solution to that risk, the proposed response to that risk. This is not the final response. You will create your own response, but this can guide you a lot. Also note down the name of the stakeholder and all the particulars about that stakeholder. So a lot many columns can be added to the risk register. So try to make it as comprehensive as possible. Then are the qualitative risk analysis. You see, before I can define the qualitative risk analysis, probably when I was discussing risk earlier, I would have given you an example how to sort a heap of stones of various sizes. You remember that example? Without measuring each and every stone, there is a heap of stone, hundreds and thousands of stones in there. You have been tasked to segregate those stones with a size of 2 inches and above. How would you do that?
By merely assumptions,
By?
by like by an idea, like assuming it.
Okay, this is not case of assumption. This is something concrete. We cannot have a stone smaller than 2 inches in the sorted list. They should be properly sorted, but we are not allowed to measure. There should be no stone smaller than 2 inches into this new heap of larger stones, but we are not allowed to measure any stone. How can you do that?
So you make a गो नो गो फिर गेज जो होती है उस तरह की कोई चीज बनाएं उसके अंदर से फिर गुजारने शुरू कर दें.
Go no go?
गो नो गो गेजेस नहीं होती सर जो 2 इंच की
Okay.
गेज बना लें आप.
Okay, right. So you make a gauge of 2 inches, and sieve. You might have seen the roadsides that the people, the laborers, are sorting the stones on roadsides when there is a road construction. So they have got a big sieve, a jali put in place, and they are throwing stones on it. So what happens is all the stones smaller than the size of the sieve pass through. All the stones bigger remain behind. So you did not measure any stone, but still you were able to segregate big from small. This is called qualitative risk analysis. This is how you have to analyze and sort big risks from small risks without measuring each and every one of them. Why I am asking you not to measure them is because if you start measure each and every risk, it will take a lot of time. Maybe you have got 2000 activities in your project and every activity has 5 risks. So you have got around 10,000 risks. The time required to exactly calculate each and every risk would be much more than the time you have spent in calculating the activities themselves. So this may take more than the project time. We cannot have indefinite time for the in the project for doing all this. So what you can do is you can, without measuring these stones, I have to create a sieve system. So this kind of sieve system does not take care of exact calculations. We do not need to know exactly how much is the probability and exactly how much is the amount at stake. Both of these figures have to be assumed in the not really assumed, but they have to be you know approximated to the nearest level. And here the impact, the probability impact chart we have seen, the table we have seen earlier, in which the scope, time, cost, and quality, that has given a 5 grades scale from very low, low, medium, high, very high. This kind of scale has to be established. This is not exact scale, but still this is good enough. So this kind of scale we can create and pass the risks through this sieve system. All those risks which are retained, these are qualitatively analyzed. This is the qualitative risk analysis. So what we are doing is the risks which have passed through, they are small risks. Now, do you remember the Pareto chart, Pareto law? Pareto law is 20% of the risks or 20% of the problems are caused by 80% of the things. Sorry, 80% of the problems are caused by 20% of the, right? So if I apply this rule here, the stones which are big enough will be fewer in number. So maybe these are just 20% stones which are of large size, more than 2 inches size, and 80% are small size. So why do you waste time on small stones? Don't calculate them, forget about them. Just put a reserves or contingency allowance to cater for them, and only take care of the big stones, the big risks. And also you will understand that these 20% stones which have been sorted out as big stones, they must be the heaviest ones. If you can weigh them, you will find that they carry 80% of the total load. Whereas those stones which have been sieved off, they all put together may not have more than 20% of the total load. Therefore, those 80% stones can be put aside and a contingency assigned to them without calculating anything, and I will have 80% load of calculation reduced. I will take only these 20% stones to the quantitative risk analysis. You get me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So in qualitative risk analysis, I have naturally the risk management plan, scope baseline, risk register, enterprise and non-real factors, and managing assets. Here I need to have that risk probability and impact assessment, and I have to create a matrix of probability and impact which will behave like a sieve system, and then I have to take care of few other things like risk data quality assessment. The data I am getting about the risks, is it authentic? Is it of some good quality? Because if this is not of good quality, this is just a hearsay, then probably I should not give it that much weightage. Then risk categorizations. We did talk about the risk breakdown structure. Which category of risk is it? Risk urgency assessment. Meaning what? That there are certain risks which are likely to happen soon. So whatever solution you have to make for them, you have to do it early. You can't wait for the whole analysis to finish, because by that time that risk would have occurred. I don't want that risk to occur before I can have a solution for that. So we have to prioritize certain risks to be treated earlier. This is the risk urgency assessment. I use the expert judgment, and as a result, I will update the risk register by this qualitative analysis data. So I will add few more columns in the risk register and put in the qualitative risk analysis there. Okay, let me show you the risk matrix. Probability and impact matrix. It will look something like this. You see, on one side, we have got the probability. These are the probabilities from very low, low, medium, high, very high. 0.1, let us assume it is 10%, 30%, 50%, 70%, and 90%. So these are the various probabilities. And on the other scale, we again have, this is the amount at stake. Very low, low, moderate, high, very high. Let us say this is 5%, 10%, 20%, 40%, and 80%. So you can see that 5 scales on this side and 5 scales on that side. This is for the threats. Just do not look beyond this line. Just look at this portion. So these are the probabilities and these are the amount at stake for the threats. As far as the opportunities are concerned, on the same chart, we will build a reverse hierarchy. we will do the opportunity very low on the other end, low, moderate, high, and very high. Now what you do? Now look at the intersection of any of these 2 points. This is the multiplication of probability and amount at stake. 0.1 into 0.05 is what? 0.1 and 0.05. 0.015. So it has dropped the 5, so it is 0.01. So 0.1 into 0.1, 0.01. 0.1 into 0.2, 0.02. So this it is filled with the formula. It is multiplying the two values. So all these values are filled into it. This is designed in such a way that the highest values will result in this funnel. These are the highest values, and the biggest value is right on top. This point, 0.72 on the threat side is the biggest value, 0.72 on the opportunity side is the biggest value. So if I can pick this funnel, I will sort all the biggest threats and opportunities. So you have to draw a line yourself for this funnel, that which are the values you have to pick, scoop up. Are you getting me? Okay, now formulate a similar kind of a matrix for yourself, and maybe you can paste it on a big wall, a huge chart. And now let us have all the risks you have identified in the risk register. Let us write each risk on a piece of paper, like a yellow post-it note. On the post-it note, write the number and name of that risk, its probability and its amount at stake, and its multiplication factor. Whatever is the multiplication factor, for example, that risk is 0.72. So put it in this box. You can paste it on this box. There is yet another opportunity which is pasted on this box. Yet another risk in this box. So you can put all your 2000 risks in the relevant boxes. You got me? Once you have pasted all the risks in this matrix and all the risks have been put there, then you can scoop up only those risks which are in the darker shaded area in the funnel. These are the top stones. These are the things which matter the most. Remaining all other things, all other risks, you will put them aside, assign a contingency for them, and they will be treated through that contingency. But these risks will have to be thoroughly analyzed in the quantitative risk analysis. Did you get it?
But as you said, you cannot do not come down to the 2 inches in each stone. Like आप 2 इंच से कम का स्टोन उठाना, तो यहाँ पर कैसे डिसाइड करेंगे, यहाँ पर लिमिट कैसे लगाएंगे?
यहाँ पे तो लगा दी ना आपने, ये नीचे लगा हुआ है, जो भी परसेंटेज आपने बनानी थी बना दी।
ये जो फनल आपने डार्क कलर की फनल बनाई है उसके अंदर लिमिट लगेगी ना, 0.24, लाइक इसके अंदर 0.24 बन रही है मिनिमम,
ये तो
ऊपर 0.18 बन रही है।
You have to decide कि where you want to pick. You can decide to pick these things, right? It is your decision. You may decide to pick these areas, or you can decide to pick these areas, but it has to be like a funnel. So this is not static, that what he has done is not to be done by you exactly. You have to decide where your funnel exists, what value. For example, to make the things easier, let us say this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4, this is 5. Similarly, 1, 2, 3. You are actually confused by the percentages. Forget about the percentages. Let's put it like this. So what is 1 into 1? Is 1. This is 2, 3, 4, 5. This is 1 into root 2, 4, 8, 6, 8, and 10. You see, I'm just multiplying 5 with 2. Now I will be multiplying 5 with 3. 15, 12, 9, 6, 3. This is 5 and 4, 20, 15, 12, 8, and 4. You can create your own. 5, 10, 15, 20, and 25. Same will happen on the other side, right?
Exactly.
So now you decide, you say anything more than 20 is, I'm sorting it out on anything more than 20. So that case, these areas will be selected. See? And on the other side, naturally, these areas will be selected. Got it?
This is yes, sir.
It is
It
just
means
simple.
you
You
are
are just
creating
copying it.
threshold.
You have 1 to 5 scale on both sides, and you decide that anything more than 10, 20, or 15 is to be sorted. You have to set your own sieve size. Got it?
Yes, sir.
So whatever that number is, he has taken the number as, I think, 0.18. Anything more than 0.18 he has selected. Right? You can see anything more than 0.18 is within that gray area. I hope you understand this thing.
Yes, sir.
This is not a very difficult thing, but I do understand that the way PMBOK has shown this matrix, that makes the things a bit complicated. It looks like some huge calculation going on, but it is very simple calculation. This is nothing. It's very simple.
सर ये पीरियोडिक टेबल टाइप चीज बनाई हुई है इन्होंने, लेकिन बात ये है कि सर जो आपके 0.72 पे आ जाएंगे, 0.36 पे आ जाएंगे,
जी जी,
जो आपने पोस्टेड नोट्स बना दिए फॉर इंस्टेंस,
जी जी,
अब उनका आगे फिर क्वांटिटेटिव एनालिसिस भी स्टार्ट करेंगे हम।
जी जी जी, एग्जैक्टली.
यू हैव सीव्ड देम आउट टू selected them for quantitative analysis, बाकियों को छोड़ देंगे.
Exactly. For further analysis, yes, exactly. And all others are considered small, and all small are put into a bag, and that bag is allocated a contingency amount without calculations. And it's very easy. You know, if I apply 80-20 rule, if the selected portion is 80% weight, then the remaining should be 20% weight. So I can apply whatever my calculated reserves are for this calculated contingency for the selected portion is I give 1/4 to the non-calculated portion. That contingency, 80%. If I consider, say, there are 80,000 rupees I have to spend on the risks which have been shortlisted. So if I divide it by 4, 20,000 rupees is the 20% of the whole. So 20,000 rupees I'll dedicate for all other risks, and 80,000 rupees I will carry on with my quantitative analysis. Then, as I described the urgency and all that, last but not least is a quantitative risk analysis. And in quantitative risk analysis, now what is the purpose of that? Naturally, the risks which have been numerically analyzed so far, they are further, elaborated uh, in exact terms. For example, you said our risk has been qualitatively analyzed and has been shortlisted. So now you can pick that risk and start calculating the exact values. For example, the risk was this room might catch fire. So exactly how much percentage is it of the probability? It is not, we are not going to talk about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 scale. We are going to talk about exact percentage. So we'll look at the statistics, we'll look at other data, we'll look at the historical information. We say, okay, this kind of building is likely to catch fire, and this is about 5% are the chances that this room will catch fire, or maybe 4.5%. And then you say, okay, what will be the loss? Then you calculate each and everything lying in that room and add it all up, and all other losses are added up, and ultimately you say it is 9,240 rupees. So 9,240 rupees will be multiplied by 4.5%, and that will give you the exact amount of that loss, and that you should dedicate for this. So this way, if I can calculate all my selected shortlisted risks, that would give me a total amount I have to dedicate for these risks. If this is considered as 80% of the whole, then maybe 1/4 of this would be 20% of the whole that I can allocate to the other risks which I have not brought for the quantitative risk analysis. So this way, this is one thing I can do in quantitative risk analysis. But quantitative risk analysis is also responsible for calculating the overall risk of the project. Overall risk of the project. How much risky this project is. And what is the total risk integer for this project. All the risks put together, the amounts put together, what is my estimate of the risk? I can now compare it with other projects. So this is also possible that the portfolio people can use this data to compare various projects among themselves. So I have to use a lot many statistical and other tools to do that. Again, I will have the risk management plan, the cost management plan, the schedule management plan, risk register, etc. Here I'll use the data gathering and representation techniques, quantitative risk analysis and modeling techniques, which are like Monte Carlo and sensitivity analysis and so many others. And I'll use my expert judgment, and ultimately I will, after having introduced this data into the project risk register, I'll update it. Okay. I hope we have already talked about the beta and triangular distribution. Anyone who does not understand that? The beta and triangular distribution, any doubts about it? If I am collecting data from a number of people, like I have consulted my stakeholders to give me the data about the risk, so I will confirm this data from other stakeholders. If I am collecting some data and most of the people are saying a specific figure, how much risky this project is, maybe they are saying on 1 to 5 scale they are saying 3, and there is a pessimist and there is an optimist. An optimist person is saying that it can be done in 1 day, and a pessimist saying it can be done in 5 days, not really days, but on a scale of 1 to 5, 1, 3 and 4. There are 3 scales. So if there are 3 scales and I have this data from not many number of people. Yes. जी anyone?
सर आवाज कट गई थी बीच में से, कुछ समझ थोड़ी सी
अच्छा अच्छा. I was saying that if the data set is less, if you are collecting data from maybe hundreds of people, then your graph would be a smooth beta curve. If it is only 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 people, then it will be considered as a triangular distribution. So if data set is shot from few people, it is triangular distribution. If data set is taken from a larger set of people, then it is a beta distribution. For beta distribution to do, apply the weighted average system. You remember we used PERT in time management and cost management, and we said optimist plus 4 times the most likely plus pessimist divided by 6. That was the beta distribution. So that was the weighted average in beta distribution. But if the people are less in a triangular distribution, you will not do a weighted average, you will take a simple average of all the values. If there are 3 values, you will just add them and divide them by 3. This is just to introduce you to the beta and triangular distribution. This you have already seen this diagram before as well. Then we have got the sensitivity analysis. There are modeling, these are the modeling techniques, risk analysis and modeling techniques. The sensitivity analysis and Monte Carlo analysis, these are the analysis which can only be done with the help of computer. They probably, it is not really possible to do it manually. So you can understand the mechanism, but you probably have to use a software to create these analysis. Sensitivity analysis helps to determine which risks have the most potential impact on the project. And for that matter, they create a tornado diagram. You see, it's a shape of a tornado. Every risk has a positive aspect and a negative aspect. After these calculations, you will, grade the risks which have been quantified. The biggest risk, how much positive aspect and how much negative aspect. The second biggest risk, the third biggest risk. So it will form a shape of a tornado. So this would clearly show you how to address these risks, which is the biggest and which is the smallest. So this is generally called as tornado diagram, and this is a result of sensitivity analysis. This sometimes can be done manually, but Monte Carlo analysis cannot be done manually. And Monte Carlo we did talk about in schedule chapter. When we create the PERT analysis, there are 3 values, most likely, pessimistic and optimistic. Naturally, we do some calculations, but there is no absolution at that we will actually be able to complete that activity in that duration. Yes, in that duration we can, between the optimist and pessimist, but exactly how much time it will take, we don't know. To take help from computer, we ask computer to take a random value within that range for every activity and run the project on its own. Computer runs a simulation of the project and tells us this project can be done in this much time. So it is not only one simulation, it runs this simulation for thousands of times. And after thousands of times, it tells us that the highest probability of completing this project is this much. And these are the durations you must be taking. So this is called Monte Carlo analysis. Then we have got expected monetary value. I'll just explain that in the subsequent. Okay, this is the example in front of you of a decision tree. Now, decision tree is you have more than one paths, and there are various probabilities on every path. There are probabilities on every path, and if you do certain thing, you can follow the path. Let's start. We have a probability, 50-50 probability of doing either project A or project B. If I do project A, the chances of success are 60% and failure are 40%. If I do project B, the chances of success are 70%, failure is 30%. So what is your decision? What do you do? Now,
Project B.
project B. And what is
Project B,
your
sir.
reason?
Highest success rate
And how did you
in
calculate?
the A and B.
5 7 35.5.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. So actually you see there are percentages on every line. So you will start from the very beginning. We'll start from this point. Let's follow this path to success. 0.5 into 0.6. All the probabilities on a path will be multiplied. 0.5 into 0.6 is 0.3. Now let's follow this path to failure. 0.5 into 0.4 is 0.2. 0.5 into 0.7 is 0.35. 0.5 into 0.3 is 0.15. Because this is the highest value, 0.35, therefore you have chosen project B. What if I change the values, the initial two values to 60-40? If there's 60% chances of doing project A and 40% chances of doing project B, then your whole game will change. 0.6 into 0.6 will become 0.36. 0.6 into 0.4 will become 0.24. 0.4 into 0.7 will become 0.28. 0.4 into 0.3 will become 0.12. So in this case, project A would stand a better chance of success. Got this?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, slightly a bit difficult calculation. Here we have to make a decision. If you do not make a decision, you don't have to spend anything. No profit, no loss. If you decide to pursue this decision, you have two options. Either the production will be successful, which has 70% chances, or unsuccessful, which has 30% chances and a loss of $200,000. If you follow the path of successful production, you have again two options. Either you can go for high demand, 30% chances and a profit of 50,000, or you can face a low demand which has 70% chances and a loss of minus 100,000. So what will you do? It is very simple. Again, I will do the same thing. I will follow right from the beginning. I will follow one track, and whatever is there on that track, I will multiply everything. 0.7 into 0.3 into 550,000. 0.7, 0.3, 550,000 is 115,500 rupees. So the weight of this branch is 115,500. Now let us again start from this beginning and go to low demand. So 0.7 into 0.7 into minus 100,000. So that comes out to be minus 49,000. The last one branch is going to production unsuccessful. That is only 0.3 into minus 200,000 comes out to be minus 60,000. Now if I add up all these three figures, that will show me the load on the whole branch at this point, at the starting point. This is the load. All the fruits lying on the various branches on this tree are putting all their load at the center, at the key point, from the origination point. This origination point is having a load of total 6,500 rupees. 6,500 rupees at this point. This is positive. This is showing that we are likely to have a profit. If I don't take this decision, I have not spent any money, but I have not earned anything. I have no benefit. What if this value was negative? Then I should not have pursued this decision. Because this value is more than 0, 6,500, therefore it is worthwhile to pursue this decision. Do you get me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, next is more interesting. Now, the similar kind of a case, here what we have an option either to build a new plant, or to upgrade an existing plant. If I build a new plant, I have to invest $120 million. Again, if I build a new plant, there is a 60% probability of going into strong demand and earning a revenue of 200 million, and 40% chances of running into weak demand and earning a revenue of $90 million. If I upgrade the plant at the investment of 50 million, 60% chances are going in strong demand and a revenue of 120 million, whereas 40% chance of weak demand and a revenue of $60 million. Now let us see what is happening to us. We invested 120 million and we got 200 million in the first branch. So what actually is the profit or loss? 200 minus 120 is 80 million profit. Similarly, let's calculate for the next case, weak demand, new plant. So 120 invested, 90 million revenue. We are at a loss of 30 million. In upgrade plant, we invested 50 and we got 120. So we are plus 70 million. And if we go in low demand, invested 50 and got 10, meaning we are in profit by 10 million. Now let us forget about the investment and revenue. Let us multiply the profit and loss with the percentage. 80 million into 0.6 into 80 million, this is one branch, and the other branch is 0.4 into minus 30. This will give me 36 million. So building a new plant is giving me a total benefit of 36 million. Whereas upgrading the plant, 0.6 into 0.7 plus 0.4 into 0.10, 0.4 into 10 gives me a total benefit of 46 million. So what is your decision? Should we build or upgrade?
Upgrade.
Upgrade. See, this is so simple. These charts may look complicated, but this is what we calculated the expected monetary value of each path and added them up. We did that in the previous example also. We calculated the expected monetary value of every path and then added that all up, and that would give us the weight of that branch. So this branch is 36 million, this branch is 46 million. So the decision point, this is called a decision point, a square. The decision point is probably I'll go for upgrade plant. Okay, risk responses. We have got risk management plan, risk register here. We have separate strategies for negative risk and separate strategies for positive risk. And we have got contingent response strategies and expert judgment, and ultimately project plan and project documents are updated. Okay, let us see how do we reduce the risk. There is one thing, if you like I can append it tomorrow, because procurement is not a very huge chapter. So the remaining part of this chapter I can address tomorrow. What do you say?
Fine, sir. That would be okay.
Okay. Any questions?
Yes, sir, so far it's good.
Okay, then I think I should call it a day then. Thank you very much and see you tomorrow. Khuda Hafiz.
Thank you.